Hey, Hanning, thanks for joining us today. As well, you're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thanks. Yeah. So my name is Henning. I'm based in Calgary in Canada. I'm originally from Norway. I came here in 2005 to join school, met the love of my life, and stuck around. It's a little personal background. I've been in sales for as long as I can remember. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and grew up with conversations about customers and sales and business at the breakfast table, so I think I started working in my dad's business at the age of 12, which I don't think is technically legal, but officially I think I've been selling stuff since I was 14 years oldish.
Yeah. So are you a natural at it, or was it something that,
I think it's something that I acquired over time, to be honest, and I was never really sure if it was the career that I wanted to pursue. But it's sort of, after completing university, the natural step was to get into sales, and I think it wasn't until maybe a year or two into that role that I realized that I can figure out how to do this, and started to become good at it.
yeah. And you got a MBA in finance, though. That doesn't seem
Yeah,
down the
yeah.
sales road, does it?
So I did again, because of the background, I did a business degree with focus on business development and entrepreneurship, and then I realized, in my role as a sales rep, I didn't really see that much value, and so I'd been in sales for about 5 years, and I was looking for some advancement, looking at leadership position, and MBA seemed like a good idea. I'd always wanted to study abroad, so that seemed like a good opportunity to do so. And my employer at the time gave me a 2 years leave of absence to go here and study and come back, a better leader. And then as I was doing my MBA, I just really loved kind of the corporate finance aspect. And so it was more just like, this is really interesting. I want to learn more about this. And I actually think it made me a better, um, more well-rounded sales rep by having some of that sort of financial background, understanding what's happening on the balance sheets and P&Ls around the world.
Yeah. And you get to talk, numbers with people
Yeah, yeah.
and
I
understand
mean,
the
I think it
difference
helps.
between CapEx and OpEx and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it helps to have an appreciation. I don't think you need an MBA with a specialization in it, but having some level of understanding is probably a good thing.
And what makes you feel makes you good at sales? Is it your personality? Is it your desire?
I hope it's a combination of the two, to be honest. I think to begin with in sales, I could come into sales junior hunter type role. And I started in sales in an environment where everybody wanted to buy the tech that we had to sell. And so it was like it was like really, it seemed like immediately very easy. But I don't think I learned a lot. I think it
Mm.
wasn't until things got hard, that I started to figure out, how to actually do the job. And and I think for me it was, I got the taste for closing big deals, and I think that's sort of what hooked me, and then realizing that I could actually close the big deals, and I could get paid a lot of money doing it. The combination of that, I think was sort of the initial driver to motivate me to continue a career in sales. Um, I think when you're closing big deals, I think I just love the complexity of it. I think I'm just naturally drawn to problem solving, and naturally drawn to dig deeper to understand what the problem is. And so I think by doing that, it sort of becomes natural for me to build some level of trust quite quickly with customers, and other people in general. I think that's a um, I don't know if that's a personality trait or again something I've developed over time, but that seems to be very important to me in my career.
Because a lot of great salespeople like that challenge of the puzzle of how to get this deal done, how to win it and block
Yeah,
out the competition and not just get a transaction, but kind of an enterprise type thing done.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely that sort of. sort of, it's you have to be curious, you need to be creative, you have to think out of the box. Sometimes you have to really put in the hours as well, right? That you need to do, and you have to be really cognizant of what's happening within the customer. Like, I always like to say that you should be the subject matter expert, but not necessarily about what you do, what the customer does, or what they actually need to get out of that transaction. So, if they need to leverage a centralized purchasing agreement, you figure out how to help them do that better and save money, for example, if that's a motivation.
Yeah.
And that could have nothing to do technically with the product that you're selling, but it might be what's actually driving their decision at the end of the day.
And do you think the first job being easy relatively helped you or hurt you?
That's a really good question. I think it motivated me to, like, it made me feel that I could be good at this. Like, it gave me some confidence.
Confidence. Yeah.
And so and this was a few years back. So this is like the dot-com bubble burst, and just the sky came crashing down one day with no Y2K budgets anymore. And it was like this, and my company had some dodgy financial transactions. Our reputation wasn't great. And so if I didn't have any confidence that I could do this job, I probably would have left. And I think many did, at that time. But I decided to stick it out, and I got some really good opportunities as a result of that.
Because a lot of people, managers, think they should put the reps on the hard stuff first versus the easy stuff first. How do you feel?
Yeah.
Do you have
Yeah,
an
and
opinion?
when you say that, as a sales leader, I tend to kind of like to give them some confidence first.
Yeah.
Like you want to give them something that they can tackle and manage before you're kind of throwing them off the cliff and letting them fly or swim or whatever you want them to do.
Well, that's it. Because if they just get rejection all day, you can have the attitude, well, that builds thick skin and stuff if they stick with it.
Yeah, yeah.
But a lot of people aren't sticking with it.
I think that's, and some might be really good at dealing with that. They just kind of like, they're gritty. They can handle it, and then they can get good results, over a period of time. But I think there's always a risk that they're going to burn out. They're going to lose interest over time. And I think leaders should probably think more long term, with their reps. And how do I build, how can I help this person build a career? And I think having the opportunity to lead teams, that's kind of been some of my proudest moments in sales. It's not necessarily closing the big deal myself, but helping someone on the team be successful. And that generally doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a longer period of time.
Yeah, because I think the best salespeople learn how to do things, as you described, smarter, more creative.
Yeah, yeah. That was one of my notes here, is like, you have to hustle in sales, but you can hustle dumb or smart. And the ones that are hustling smart, they typically are more successful over time. But again, you don't acquire that right away.
No,
it's easy to hustle dumb.
It is.
Yeah.
And today I think that's the focus is,
Yeah.
more dumb things faster instead of,
Yeah,
but the objective is to sell, not just to be busy and miserable.
exactly. Yeah.
And on the creative side, what about that excites you? Is it seeing it come together? Is it beating the competition? Is it beating other people on the leaderboard?
I've definitely had, been in some really competitive industries and challenging sort of the market leader. And there, it's like being able to beat them has been huge, and losing against them has been horrible. Right. And so you take it almost personally when you're in that environment, and every deal is a fight. So definitely that's part of it. But I think it's in part just seeing the puzzle come together, and maybe also seeing that puzzle being completed, by the customer. So you kind of realize that you've been able to help them solve something that was important for them, whether it's personally for their company. More so than not, it's for the individual, or the individual in the organization. They need something get done, and they end up trusting you, right, to help them do that. And to do that, you have to bring something to the table that's more than just a product or a solution. And so I think that's probably the biggest driver, or the most exciting outcome of thinking outside the box, being creative, challenging the customer. And I don't mean necessarily challenge your sales, but I mean just help them challenge the status quo, and help them ask questions. Like, if they're going down this path, why are they doing that? Are they doing that for the wrong reason, for the right reason? And that approach tends to work in almost all aspects of sales, whether you're prospecting or you're in that phase where you're solutioning, discussing different options with them, or you're closing. And I think to do that right, you have to be creative. You have to give them some feedback that they weren't necessarily expecting from you. You have to surprise them in a positive way.
And it sounds like you don't act like a salesperson. I mean that as a compliment.
I don't think I do. And that's why I said, it's like, I'm not sure if I'm the natural sales rep. I think it's like my personality with acquired skills over time. Because I don't think necessarily people want to buy from a salesperson the way that they typically think of a salesperson.
Right.
And so coming in there with a different approach, and being original, in a way that adds value to their day, and to the end result for them, I think is very important.
And how do you do that? It sounds like you're asking tough questions, things that they're not thinking about, implications.
Yeah, I think it's a good combination of some experience, some research, not just into what the company does, but what are people in that role typically concerned about, what's driving them. And I think the finance MBA sometimes helps with that. And maybe also having been in situations where you've had to manage finances, or imagine yourself being in that situation. It's like, hey, what would I do? What would I need? Do I need a best friend, or do I need, somebody that actually knows how to help me save money? And so I think that's going a little bit deep on that is important. Maybe not in all aspects of the sales process, but definitely when you're kind of in front of an opportunity after you pass that first hurdle of getting in and booking that meeting. It's really important to really understand who you're talking to, and also have a not necessarily empathy, but an understanding of why they would want to spend even 5 minutes with you.
Yeah, it is empathy. And I think a lot of people don't really get empathy. I think a lot of people, how the product would impact them, but it's really, what are they trying to accomplish with the product?
Yeah. Yeah.
How does their workflow change? How does their political existence in the organization change?
Yeah. 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 One of the companies I'm working with now, we have a safety management software. And so we met with a large company about their existing safety management system. Large global company, 76,000 employees, I think, in 70 odd some countries, right? And they start the conversation like, we're super happy with our our existing product, gives us everything that we need. And then we just start talking about it. What does it do? How does it do that? Is there something that it doesn't do? And then we realize that it doesn't do really what they need at all. The product itself is good, but it actually doesn't help them accomplish what they need to do. And I think like that balance of through that process of understanding, asking the right question, but those are challenging them. So you can always play those kind of conversations back to them as they go along. So yeah, you like the visibility that it gives you, but you don't trust the data. So then, is that a concern for you? Right. And what are you currently doing to maybe deal with that? Well, I just love that kind of how that back and forth goes. It's really interesting.
Well, that's it, because most clients are comfortably known. They've kind of learned how to live with how things work today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the way we were before smartphones.
Yeah.
We need to make calls and maybe an email here and there. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until you can see, oh, I can browse the internet. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Did somebody teach you that, how to like activate that latent pain, or was it something you kind of
I
learned
don't think
along the
so.
way?
I think I just learned along the way. I mean, later in my career, I've been through some sales training of proper discovery calls and all the kind of acronyms that you need to know these days. But I don't think it felt like that was sort of just confirmation of the process that I was already doing in a way. Now I say that these trainings and these frameworks are good in a way because they're a good reminder. But I think it's something that you acquire if you're really serious about being a good salesperson. You know, you continuously evaluate your own performance. You don't wait for your boss. You don't wait for the CRM to tell you that things are not going in the right direction. You know, you should have like a good understanding of like, what am I doing and how is that working for me, and how can I do things smarter, and whether that is changing up, you know, your cadences or your content, or maybe learning something new, read a new book, all right, get some new impulses. You know, it can be a number of different things, but I think that's really important to learn on your own. And I don't know if I can say this on this podcast, but I also think that there's a lot of people that are kind of in a position where they're mentoring and coaching people that are new to the sales profession, and they're not necessarily great mentors or coaches. They're often in that role because it's the next step if you're successful, and
Yeah.
and so I think that makes it even more important, especially as you said, in this world where, you know, it's all about hitting your activity numbers and your KPIs, and do just more things of something. We don't really care the result of that, but just do more of it. You know, and that tends to be such a focus for people entering the profession, that developing that ability to look at your own performance and gain your own insights independent of, you know, what other people might think. You might be on a different trajectory than what your boss thinks you should be on, and probably a good idea to be on your boss's trajectory too, but like think longer term for yourself, and develop those insights about what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and what seems to be working and not, and create your own plan and your own development plan.
And did you get pushback from any sales leaders that, no, just do it my way or the company way, or?
You know, I was expecting you to say that, or ask me that, and I was thinking back, and there's been throughout my career, there's been questions asked, but for some reason, I've been in a situation where I've always been a consistent performer. I've never really been the number one sales rep, like in a given quarter or a given year, although I've had some amazing experiences, you know, being right up there. But I think it's just that consistency. And so they're kind of like, okay, we're just going to let Henning do whatever he does because it seems to
It's
be working.
working.
Yeah, yeah. And generally speaking, you know, when they do look at the KPIs and other things, you know, it's there, right? It's not far off.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you know, we need to hit and exceed quota, both for our own sake, so we earn. But I mean, that's what we're there to do and paid to do.
And how have you avoid the Bplayer trap, where you get pretty good, you make your
Yeah.
number?
Yeah, you know, that's interesting. I think there's been times in my career where I definitely been an A player, but I think there's been times too where I've sort of been happy being a B player. I think I think when it comes to working with a team, you know, I'd almost much rather have, you know, a team full of B players than, you know, than a couple of C's and A, and then maybe one or two B's, just because within that B player there's a lot of people that will have the potential to become an A. I When I've hired for sales roles and built teams and whatnot, I try to look for sort of people that are really interested in learning, and that are really curious. You
Yeah.
know, not they don't have to have a business background or even sales experience, but you know, I think at one time I hired a copywriter for an SDR role, and he was amazing at it. because he could think like the customer is thinking. He's a journalist background, and so he would be able to quite quickly, turn, a conversation that he was having into good content right away. And he could quite easily also understand what wasn't working with his content, and getting, so I think it's like, but that was because he had some education background that helped, but he was curious, right? Like, he was very
Curious.
curious. He wanted to figure this out. Like, what can I do next to get better at this? And I think if you have that mentality, like, you're not content, like, you don't want to be stuck being a B player. You want to move
More.
forward.
Yeah.
And it could be in part the money, or you want to be the best, but it's also just that curiosity. It's like, I just want to know what I can do next to do a little bit better.
Yeah, because in the B player trap, people tend to become know-it-alls if they don't have that curiosity.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
And I don't know how you feel about that, but I've never seen the know-it-all have much success.
I don't think so. Yeah, you definitely need to kind of step out of yourself, and not think about so much what you currently know, but think about what you can learn.
Right.
Um, and yeah, no, I think you're very, very right. Like, I worked with a lot of really good sales reps that have been colleagues, that have been strong B players, if you will, but maybe thought they had it all. They knew they had their process. This is how we do it. It works every time.
Until it doesn't.
Until it doesn't, and then it just really doesn't work.
And then it's someone else's fault.
Yeah. It's the market conditions, or it's a number of different things. Well, it's our job to be in the market. We have to deal with the market conditions. It's part of the job.
Right. The economy doesn't stay steady. Nothing
Exactly.
stays steady.
Yeah. I mean, there are harder times, and there are easier times, and sometimes you just can't hit your number. But you can really tell, when you're talking to people, who are the ones that are really aware of why that is, and are already thinking about how they're going to fix it, versus the ones that are using it as an excuse.
Yeah. And how do you use creativity in your sales process? Is it?
Oh, that's another very good question. I think it's one part of it is that customer facing part, where you need to think out of the box around, who do I need to engage on this? How can I learn more about what's really happening behind the scenes? You might be struggling getting into the right person. So how do you then get around that problem, right? There's a number of different things you need to do, and being creative with that certainly doesn't hurt. You might even say that some people might get really creative in even the prospecting phase. I think we've all tried and failed on a number of different things, but at the end of the day, if you understand your customer, that would be the number one. Like, understand why this buyer should be willing to spend even a minute on the phone with you. If you have a good understanding of that, and you can articulate why that is, then you probably have a pretty good shot, if you do get them on the phone, to get past that and get to the next step. The other part, I think, is that internal part, whether like you mentioned, like my sales process, I think of it more like my job is to help the buyer buy, not so much me selling. And so that they might not always buy the way that you want to sell. And so being flexible and being able to work within kind of there, and that maybe not so much creative as flexibility, but being able to notice that and understand that and adapt to it. It's maybe part of creativity. The last part, I think, is, if you want to win big deals, you can't just look at your current offering and your current organization, how you currently do things, and say, this is the way, because it probably isn't. And so you have to be willing to sometimes take up that fight with your customer success team, or your account management team, or even your engineering team, or your product team. Say, hey, if we can bring this deal in, and this is how we're going to do it. But in order to do that, we actually have to do this. slightly different than how we're doing it today. And so the combination of that, I think, is in some cases it's not possible. If you're selling a kind of off-the-shelf SaaS software, customizing the product just isn't part of the option. But in many cases, if you're selling a more complex sale, or even just doors and windows, like there are ways that you can easily kind of augment how you currently do things to help you get the deal across the line.
Because what I always noticed was not everybody wanted it to do exactly what it was designed to do, the way it was designed to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that happens. But I think also in that, if that happens, Brian, you have to also understand, why do they want it to do it a different way? Have they come up with some magically better way of doing it that we're not currently aware of? Or maybe they're stuck in doing something in a way that may not make sense, in 2023 or 2025 or whatever the year is. So I think there's an opportunity in that too, to come across as an advisor. But again, it might also not be, but you need to understand where you're sitting. Like, are you sitting in an area where, I can close a $5 million client if we just do it this way, and they actually seem to have figured out a better way to do it. It makes more sense for everyone involved, and maybe we should do it that way. Or maybe if it doesn't, the job is then to work with them and see if there's a way they can do it that fits better with the service or the product that you're offering.
Yeah. And when you're interviewing salespeople, what are the top 3 or 4 things that you're looking for that they have to have it, or it's not going to work for you?
It's got to be, I always look at the questions that they ask. So I look at that as one of the best tests for whether you're curious or not. And I typically look for questions that I might not even be expecting, or things that aren't commonly asked. So that's one thing. It's easy to say that, yeah, I'm really curious, but then if you have no questions for me, then I'm not really sure at that time. The other thing that I like to do, and I know that there's lots of people that is not a fan of this, but I do a little role play at every initial interview that I'm in. And it's really quick. It could be about something that's not our company. It's not sell me this pen, but just imagine, you're selling this product and you've got a customer on the phone, and just let's just play it out. And then I would typically give some feedback, and then we'd run the same role play again. So this is all like just a maybe 8 to 10 minute exercise. And I look for those that are trying to improve, or maybe that are actually making an attempt to deploy some of the advice that they got in that first conversation. Now, this is just me recently hiring BDRs, SDRs. Be a little bit different with seasoned AEs, yeah. But those are 2 things that I've been looking for. For a more seasoned sales rep, I'm looking for someone that's thoughtful and that can listen to what I'm saying and play that back to me in a way that is sort of they're applying some of their own knowledge and experience, and they're adding value to the conversation. And so that can be, in some ways, it's almost like I'm looking for some of those interviews to be almost like a kind of a discovery type conversation, where I'm trying to learn about you, you're trying to learn about me. And then if we're both happy at the end of it, we go to the second stage. But there's not like a question necessarily that I use, but the curiosity piece, the ability to quickly sort of add value to the conversation, as well as the kind of the ability to take advice and maybe be coachable.
Have you ever hired somebody who wasn't able to take advice, or rationalized why they did the role play the way they did it?
I actually don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I've had some that have rationalized it, but not to the point where they've said that, I don't want to change it. I think they've still tried, and to be honest, like the second time you do it, technically it's worse than the first time, because now you're so like
awkward.
It's awkward now. It was awkward to begin with, but now it's really awkward. And I know that I mentioned I don't like to throw them out on the deep end, but this gives you a slight indication of what they would do. And if they didn't make it, would they come to you and ask for help? And I think that's really important as a leader, to work with a team that realizes that, hey, you know what, I need to grow. I can be better at this. And, and I want to get advice on how to do that. It's really hard to build a successful team if you don't have team members that are like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
So LinkedIn's probably the best place. Henning Mo. I don't think there's many of us on LinkedIn. So yeah, I'd love to connect with as many as possible. And I really appreciate this conversation, Brian. It was good. It's really good.